Welcome to this episode of Just Liberty with David Skeel. And I wanted to continue our conversation where we left off. It seems, do you think it would be fair or safe to say that in the legal academy, in part it depends on what your field is? That there are some fields where Christian integration or a Christian worldview would be deemed not as threatening to the general legal academic world, professoriate, and that there's other areas where it might be considered more by some people. But I don't want to overgeneralize either, because I know even among those who are not Christian law professors, that there is a range, right? There's a range of responses. Some who might consider it sort of like raising exotic fish or something, like a nice little side hobby, but what does this have to do with with the serious work of legal academia? Some who might be friendly towards it and go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I can hear that view and see what I can do. And maybe those who are not as welcoming as well. I think it's probably fair to say that there's a range among those who don't share our Christian faith. But I mean, do you think it partially depends on what part of, because academia is generally pretty specialized, right? So there may be some areas that, I don't know, might be considered more welcome or less threatening, or however you want to put it, for a Christian to, I don't know, talk about the year of Jubilee and bankruptcy, or to
which folks don't tend to find too threatening.
Or what do you think about?
I think that's probably true. I think in most areas of law, you can speak as a Christian without being completely silenced. Part of it depends on how you go about it as well. Though folks who feel called to really engage in the culture wars kinds of issues, they're going to get a lot of pushback. Folks who are not close to those issues are going to get less. So in my areas, in business law areas, there hasn't really been an issue. I'm not usually dealing with hot button issues. Occasionally a hot button issue will come up, and so
you probably could find common ground in criticizing corporations for greed.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great, and I've done it. I like that. I like that common ground, and my own personal instinct tends to be not to be a flamethrower, not to be directly engaging in some of those issues, and that's just kind of who I am. I think for other people, if you're in an area that raises hot button issues and you engage them directly, you're probably going to get pushback. Like
constitutional law.
That's where
bioethics or
exactly, and
which happen to be things that I've done. Courses I've taught and areas I've written in.
I mean, it is very different than bankruptcy or corporate law. So my experience in teaching has been exactly what you just described, without so much the dramatic pushback part. So particularly for the first 20-25 years I was teaching, a few of my colleagues tended to think that my faith was, as you said, like a hobby. It's like we have somebody who likes playing video games, we have somebody who really loves to bowl, Skeel's a Christian, and then there'd be a couple of people who are not Christians who found it interesting and would want to talk about it, and we'd have conversations about it. Vast majority of people were just kind of indifferent about it. As long as I kept writing my bankruptcy articles and my corporations articles, they were fine. So I haven't tended to get the pushback, but I'm not in the areas that you're in, and right now is a little bit different time. I think there is generally more pushback across the board right now as part of just how polarized the culture has become.
Yes, indeed. If I recall correctly, I think you and Professor Dan Crane at Michigan did this study about law professors, and including the faith component, and that it was, if I remember correctly, an empirical study and kind of a descriptive study of legal academia, but you explicitly included the faith dimension in it, if I remember correctly.
We did. Unfortunately, we never published it. It was never published. It was very interesting, and one of the things that a couple things triggered it. One is the perception that that law schools are not hotbeds of religious faith, and another was the fact that there are no evangelicals on the Supreme Court. You know, when you look at the Supreme Court justices, even the ones, now there are a number that are of strong faith, they tend to be Catholic, not evangelical, and so we were curious about that, and we did come up with some data, and they were what you would guess, but still stunning. You know, just how small a percentage of folks are Christians, particularly on faculties.
Right, right. Would it be accurate to say that there are faculties in this country with no evangelical Christian, just like the U.S. Supreme Court does not have a single evangelical Christian?
I think it would. Certainly, I'm confident it would be accurate to say there are faculties without somebody who's known to be an evangelical Christian on the faculty. My guess is there are faculties without evangelical Christians.
That's my informal take on it without having done the research and gathered the data that you all have. What would you say to encourage the Liberty Law School community in maybe our last bit here? What would you say?
I mean, the main thing I would say is keep doing what you're doing, and the ceremony that we're going to be involved in this afternoon, which I associate with the Ebenezer stone in 1 Samuel, I think it's really important to do things like that, to stop, particularly at important moments, such as your graduating year as a law student, and remember what God has done for you in the past, and remember what we have to be grateful for, which includes God's work in our own lives, also God's work in this country. You know, we're not a Christian country, but there are lots of Christian fingerprints. And looking back to that and committing to continue to follow God in the future. And I think this is a place that does it like none other. So keep doing what you're doing.
Well, appreciate that. And keep up with what you're doing. You're doing some amazing work in terms of the Christian law, apologetics, but also we need Christians to be in all the different fields. If it is true what you're saying, that as Abraham Kuyper famously said in his Stone Lectures at Princeton, there is no square inch of the universe of which Jesus Christ, who is Lord of all, does not say mine, right? So of bankruptcy, of banking, of, the whole gamut of business and financial sorts of things. If we believe it's the leaven that should be raising the whole loaf, if we believe that all truth is God's truth, if we believe that that there are things to learn from the great Christian thinkers over the millennia, as well as the scriptures themselves, it seems like there's all sorts of possibilities all across the academy to be able to have an engagement and Christian integration.
I think that's absolutely true. And there was a long time when Christians tended to be hesitant to get into certain fields, and I think that's a mistake. And I know in my generation, a lot of us were influenced by Francis Schaeffer and his call to do just what you said, to have Christian bankers, Christian lawyers, Christian politicians, and remember the Kuyper statement that every square inch of the world is God's.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you. That concludes our episodes with David Skeel of Just Liberty. Please join us for future episodes.